We believe that every employee should be vibe coding, but not in the way you think.
We see 10x. We did a $250,000 project that created $10 million of new revenue.
These 7 levels of AI fluency that you believe people should go through.
Because every industry is different and every manager doesn't know how to use AI perfectly for their workers. The best CEOs come to us and say, my team needs AI help. How do you build something and workflows for my team? But the most important part is it's our infrastructure. We have skills. We have a library of skills. We have Claude that can be supported by anyone in the business. We worked with a $500,000 company, and weeks after we launched it, they're a $1 million company. A good CEO knows that, and they say the AI can be applied where the bottlenecks are happening first. And that is not the CEO, that is not the sales, that is not marketing typically, that is the...
Welcome back to the Return on Intelligence podcast. My name is Nishan Cook-Nelson, Growth Marketing Lead here at 923, and I'm here with Andrew Amen, our CEO. Andrew, how's it going?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to dive into some controversial opinions. One of which is you said that you think every employee should be vibe coding, but you gave a massive caveat. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, vibe coding is now just meaning running Claude code on your machine to do workflows and automations on what you used to use as side apps, or I would say productivity improvement apps across some of your largest software tools that you've had in the past. So Monday.com, HubSpot, they're core solutions for businesses. We run all of our projects on Monday. It is not a tool we're ever going to give up. It manages the infrastructure of our projects. HubSpot, the same way, the source of truth of every HubSpot project, of all of our contacts, all of our leads, all of our deals, all of that is, there's a lot of code and structure that goes into the guardrails of HubSpot that I don't think we can ever get away from. And so the source of truth is always going to be HubSpot. The accumulation of emails, the accumulation of notes, Fathom calls, like meetings, everything goes back to the source of truth in HubSpot. And recreating that would be silly. Like the tokens it would take would be larger than the amount it cost me to pay the HubSpot rental subscription. So where does that lead us? Is like, I have these foundational tools. One's HubSpot, another one's Monday.com. We also have Harvest as our time tracker. And those foundational tools are integral to our business and how we operate. But every employee now should be building their modifications and their speed runs on top of our infrastructure. But the most important part is it's our infrastructure. We have skills. We have a library of skills. We have Claude that can be supported by anyone in the business. Anyone can go in and get access to Claude. We have about 40 licenses. Of those licenses, when you're using it, of course, you can just pile drive on top of the internet, which is what most companies do, and that's where they start. But wouldn't it make more sense to do foundational procedures, operating systems, and processes from a company? Take all of your data as a company and create the skills based on that, not somebody else's company. And when you think of it that way, your foundational model, your infrastructure, all of that things that make your IP who you are as a company is vital to the building on top of it. Because if you're creating like an invoice and you're like, hey, I would love to automate my invoice schedule, you do it very specifically at your company. But if you vibe code on top of Claude that's learned on the internet, there's 1,000 companies that do it different ways, that Claude is like taking the law of averages to say, this is how you should run your invoice. But you should run it the way your company wants you to run it, on the procedures, processes, and management of that company. And this is like true across the board. And this is what we build all day long. Every company should have an IP. Every company should have that IP based on a large language model that's fine-tuned on their data, and then let your employees vibe code on top of that. And that's why I think every employee now should look at their automations, their workflows, and what they do every day, and have a natural conversation with a machine to say, can you do this faster for me? Where the company set up the guardrails of communicating with that company.
One of the things you talk about a lot is that selection of your data storage, like SharePoint versus Google Drive. It seems like there's these slots that get filled, that data storage one, maybe the CRM. What are some of those, like you talk about building on top of it? Like, do they just copy those links into Claude? Like, how do they actually build on top of that?
The important thing is to know is where's your infrastructure, and data is really hard to organize. So you have to have places like HubSpot organizing things for you. You have to have Monday.com organizing projects for you. And then you can automate on top of that. Now, these tools specifically are adding AI into their software suite because they understand that if I can make Monday easier for the masses, more people will stay on Monday instead of dropping the software. Same with HubSpot. Like Dharmesh is going all founder mode. He's going to go back to the days of selling HubSpot, like sales calls, I imagine. But the point is, AI is baked into HubSpot. And so when you create a workflow, an automation, a tool, you're increasing your speed of using those tools with your daily lives or integrating with other tools. The Claude Code is something that should be plugged in on your computer, plugged into your company's like team account, or in our case, we use Claude, but you can also use Gemini or if you're on a Microsoft suite, you can use Copilot. And once that thing's plugged into your company data, now people can build, whether they're called gems and Gemini or on Claude, they're called skills. You can share skills across the organization. We were talking this morning about our onboarding process. It takes about 2 days to go through onboarding at 923. It's like 145 documents, procedures all over the place. How great would it be is after you're done onboarding, you now have a place to communicate with that and have a conversation with it, ask questions, or every time you use your Claude Code machine to say, hey, I wonder how I can make my life easier here, it would say, these rules are the guardrails. And so it would set up the boundaries for you. And so that's what we're heading towards as a company. We're finally in the position where Claude is proficient enough for us to use. It's been 6 months since we've been, kind of using it. But like 6 months ago, it just wasn't at this state where you can share skills, you can share and work as a team on top of these vibe coded tools. And that's where the industry is right now.
Nice. Well, how does that thing, the SharePoint thing and the Gemini instance that we going on the back end differ from this?
The back end, like how does SharePoint differ from
the SharePoint solution that you're super excited about, where we take someone's SharePoint data and make it readable?
Yeah. So how does it differ? So SharePoint itself is a storage repository. And the thing that's happened with AI that I wish more people would realize is that for the last 10 years, there was multiple agencies, companies, and organizations that said, upgrade your CRM, upgrade your ERP, upgrade your MRP, like go through a 3 to 5 year swap to get onto a place that is more cloud friendly, that is easier to manage, that like will make your life easier, will customize it for you. In 2015 to 2020, that was like the march. And these poor companies, like they're on antiquated systems. They would train their employees on these systems that have horrible UI. But Microsoft is in 95% of enterprise companies. And so SharePoint is like the repository of work. It is the home base of where people store stuff, where they find files, where they share stuff. It is become like a company's database. And so a lot of companies are coming to us now and say, our SharePoint's kind of a mess, but I still want to have a conversation with my data. User permissions become the most important part of this. And Microsoft has this thing called Microsoft Entra, where we control the user permissions of all the data that we ingest into AI using Microsoft's user permission control system. We don't have to invent our own user permissions. We don't have to store a file and wonder who has access, who doesn't have access. Like Microsoft itself takes care of that, and Gemini does it too in their Google Drive. But SharePoint is still their source of truth. It's where all the files are. If you're a legal firm, all of your court cases, all of your history of like working with each client is stored in a folder with the client name. Give access to AI, let AI crawl those data sources, keep user permissions and security intact, make a bubble so that your data doesn't get leaked to the internet, and then create your own internal ChatGPT based on the repository of data from SharePoint. Think of it as like a giant database at this point. Your company's been around for 20, 30 years. Fantastic. Don't build a new MRP system. Use the same MRP system, but chat with SharePoint as stuff gets saved in SharePoint. And it's the new wave of how you should work. And that's how we're 10xing companies' productivity.
Wow. Next is the employee fluency. There's this now levels, these 7 levels of Claude Code, call it Gemini, doesn't matter. These 7 levels of AI fluency that you believe people should go through.
Yeah. Well, the first one's like realization. And each of those stages, they go through the iteration of how humans basically learn. What I don't want people to do is stop learning. The weakness of ChatGPT and the direction of ChatGPT is that the more people use it, the lazier we're becoming because we're missing the learning phase. But in those 7 stages, you're starting to talk first about how to work with the machine. And so you're learning how to prompt, you're learning how to build, and you're learning how to think as the machine is responding to you. How do you get things that you're interested in improving in your day? Then you get to level 2, which is like realizing that there's a plan and realizing that like if you plan first and you create an outline and you say this is where we're starting but this is the end game I want to go, I can 10x my output. So instead of just like one-shot prompting and trial and error, you're like creating an outline. Now, Claude Code figured this out too. This is the big change in 6 months ago. If you've used Claude Code before that, it didn't have this planning implementation plan mode. It once it created that, things changed. After you do that level 2, you move into reusable blocks. You start to realize that like my business workflow over here is similar to this business workflow over here. I still need to tap into the same MCP or API. Like, why do I need to rebuild that? Why don't I just create building blocks and then use what we are calling markdown files as skills for each of the projects that I'm working on, and then reference those skills as opposed to like recreating it every time. So you get to level 3 of like reusability. And this is, again, like think of a kid building with blocks or Legos. Step 3 is like, oh, I just built a helicopter and a car. Why don't I like reuse that to build like a tank? It's the same thought process. So then when you get to level 4, you're basically looking at like massive tools that start to break down into like really small functions. And that's where, project management, product management comes in. We don't just build a solution in 5 months in one prompt. We break it down into scopes, into features, into different elements. And once we break it down there, we have our outline, we have our plan, and we have different features. And now you're starting to produce giant feature sets, but the software you're building is going to be much bigger, much more usable. Level 5, you start tracking tools together and you start completing like a system. Because you have your building blocks, you link tool 1 with tool 2, and you're integrating with tool 3. And because you're having an outline, you're building actual software. And then level 6 is my favorite because everyone hates it. It's QA, testing the system. I have my QA is called Quali. I have a 5-page report of how to test, like we do at 923, like how do you test software? And when I get frustrated and things aren't working, I'm like, Quali, go to town. Go tell me like how to fix this, how to like what broke, like how do we get back to where we were before? And then you get to step 7, which is like taking it into one PRD, like one requirements document, and then starting all over. Because if you did trial and error and you build the blocks and you did the schedule and you're kind of figuring it out, at a certain point, like it's messy. The code is messy. Kind of had an idea at the beginning. You had a bunch of Legos in front of you and you kind of got a helicopter. But then once you saw the vision, you're like, I get it now. So you tear the whole thing down with a product requirements document and you start fresh. And that's when you can build it in a day. And that's when it gets really fun. And I've done that for all my vibe coded tools is build features, build sets, create the frame, fiddle with it, have it break, and then just say, cool, I'm ready to go. Here's the one prompt to start me off.
Nice. How did you discover that? How'd you come across those 7 levels?
So there's 2 books. There's one called Learning in Parallel, I think it is. I can't remember the name of the author, but there's also Naval has a book called Naval Almanac, and he talks specifically about how people use reading and how he uses different parts of reading and how he blocks concepts together using different books, but he doesn't read the full book. He read parts of books, and that's how he's educated himself over time. And so when I put those 2 together, I'm like, that's what Claude Code is. The implementation of a plan, trying to understand like a really complex problem, breaking it down into first principles. And the way Naval explains it, it's usually like, kind of revealing that people use it the same, like they think the same way, but learning is still learning. And I think Claude Code figured out 6 months ago, like implementation plans, project management, product management was a thing that was missing from the one-shot prompts. And so I think all of this came together inside of like these 7 levels of just how people learn and how it's the scientific method, right? It's the same. They have 5 steps in the scientific method. You add QA and you add tearing it all down. It's a pretty good process.
I like how you don't reinvent the wheel. I think that's something a lot of people started doing. And we were talking recently about committing to GitHub. It's like people were dealing with, oh, I lost my whole file. Oh, I lost my entire project. Oh, I don't have a way to go back to the previous version that I built. What do I do? It's like, oh, hey, actually developers who've already been doing this for decades have an entire process for doing this. So I like how you're telling people to build off of the foundation of software development. And that's why I'm very skeptical of people like marketing agencies that then turn into AI development agencies because the foundation they're building on misses some of those core components.
Yeah. I mean, you can follow our top developers post twice a week, Dennis, and a lot of the stuff that he's finding with, especially going through interviews, he'll sit on an interview with somebody that's a junior developer and they'll try to vibe code, how to set up an environment. And Dennis is like, just read the manual. Like there's been years and years and years of setting up environments. You can vibe code it, of course, but like when you hit a roadblock, you don't know at what point you are in the learning manual. If you just read the learning manual, step 1 is X, step 2 is Y, like just follow it and you're good. It takes you less time than talking in English. And he gets so frustrated every single time he gets on a new interview and somebody's vibe coding how to set up environments, how to set up a code base. And he's just like, this is insane. But yeah, I wasn't happy about committing to GitHub, but if you use two computers, like how else do you do it? Or if you wake up one morning and you want to add some code and you're like, hey, from where we left off, I need to commit something into a new branch. That's how you do it. That's what people have invented. So you use
Yeah,
it.
it's those that 20% of information that you need to know, the Pareto's principle. It's the 20% of guitar chords that allow you to play all the songs.
Yes.
GitHub, I would definitely consider that
Yes.
20% of software development everyone should know.
Yes.
Going back to this AI fluency and those 7 levels, something I found that was interesting, I put this image in our notes, is Ramp, which is a very fast growing company. We'll throw up some of the stats here, actually measures AI fluency of all their employees, and they put it in these 4 tiers. Level 0 is someone who just like kind of uses ChatGPT. L1 is someone who actually uses the projects and GPTs. L2 is someone who builds an app to automate part of their job. And then L3 is someone who actually builds things that makes other people's jobs easier. So I'm curious, where do you think most people fall on this right now? And where do you think is worth getting to, even as our team helps people build solutions? Where should people expect their employees to actually be?
I think it's actually a comparison tool. It's odd that managers would put out this level of AI technicality of a grading scale, because in essence, what you want to promote as a manager is output. You want to accelerate output. You want people to have the agency that like they can control the output, but you get paid, employees get paid on their output and their performance. If 5 people are in the same role and one person is using AI and their output is 10x higher, you start asking why the other 4 are not as high, and you discover that AI is considerably helping that department or that team. If all 5 individuals are not using AI and all 5 are not outputting, the only question you need to ask is, what is my competition doing? Because maybe it's not possible to use AI more proficiently than your team is. And I would imagine if you have 5 people, one of them is going to start taking a shortcut because they want to raise. It's just the natural competition of people. And so once that happens, the AI is available to all 5 of those individuals. It's hard for me to believe that one of the 5 won't start accelerating. Once that happens, you'll start understanding how this AI tool is going to be used. So I wouldn't measure it, as a competent user scale. I would measure it as a competent team, because if you give the teams the tools, and most teams are competitive, knowing that somebody wants a raise, somebody wants to move ahead in life, and somebody's going to be more committed to getting more sales, selling more widgets, whatever the thing is, you'll have natural competition. And when you have natural competition, you'll have natural output. I would rather measure it that way and let teams determine the AI usage, because every industry is different and every manager doesn't know how to use AI perfectly for their workers. I think the biggest mistake CEOs make is thinking that the CEO tool or their CEO dashboard is like the only tool they should pay for. The best CEOs come to us and say, my team needs AI help. How do you build something and workflows for my team? So whoever put this together as level 3 technical grade AI builder, those are the individuals you want to hire in your company if they're building for other people in your company. But as they build for other people in your company, it should level up everybody at the same pace. And through competition, you'll start to determine where AI actually should be applied from who's using it and who's not.
You started to hit on it a little bit. Tell me about that leadership responsibility, not saying, hey, I know all the AI that our team needs, but actually going to the employees.
Yeah, it's a shame. I'd probably talk to 100 million to billion-dollar companies 2 to 3 times a week, whether they're working with us or they're asking for a proposal from us. And it's getting hot. Like, there are people that are calling us being like, I'll 2x the money if you can just start next week. And that process of an executive where they think AI is like this magical bullet, and they've read a magazine or a book or a tweet or something that said how to install AI, and they're like, we're just going to do that. Let me go hire an agency and do that thing. That's the mistake, because the executive is not letting the experts actually diagnose the problem with their business. And it's like the problem as old as time. You have throughput as a business. And as a CEO, like, you want more output from the entire system, not just like one department. And if you roll this back to a manufacturing supply chain, you have marketing, sales, procurement, all that stuff at the beginning that's inputting stuff into the pipeline. And then you have your machines, your widgets, your QA, and that's the output. If you just take AI and you just like add it to sales and marketing, well, fantastic. Like, that one machinist is going to quit, because he's like, I'm not doing 700 hot dogs a day. Like, I did 7, and you guys are asking me, like, I know you sold 700, but like, I got one grill and like one heater and like this one small chain of hot dog stuff. You guys can't shovel 700 hot dogs through here. A good CEO knows that. and they say the AI can be applied where the bottlenecks are happening first. And that is not the CEO, that is not the sales, that is not marketing typically. That is the workflow of the company, the throughput of the company. And so when you identify that and the good teams identify that and we work on that, I mean, we see 10x. We did a $250,000 project that created $10 million of new revenue. They hit AI at the right spot. We worked with a $500,000 company, and weeks after we launched it, they're $1 million company. They hit on the right part of the bottleneck. And so that's two ends of the spectrum. The one's a $100 million business, another one's a $1 million business, but both CEOs didn't solve the problem for themselves. They solved it for their teammates that were using these systems that were antiquated that they just unlocked. Nobody got fired. All the people just did more work. And in the $100 million case, they went from 5,000 units to 5,500 units every day. And that was a $10 million unlock. More people did more work at the same amount of time that they were doing work. 8 hours turned into 8 hours, but 4 units a day went to 8 units a day. That's the magical of the unlock. And the CEO knew that as soon as they called us.
Wow. If you're wondering how to put together your AI strategy to do what Andrew just discussed, of like how to actually talk with your team, the questions you should be asking, how to do that operational bottleneck audit, then you can click the first link in the description where it has our AI readiness guide. It'll actually walk you through a series of questions, and then it'll give you a score and a recommendation on the next steps of what you should do. Andrew, this is a great episode.
Thanks, Nishan. I appreciate it. See you next week, everyone.